after 6. From ABC, this is World News Tonight with Peter Jennings.
Good evening. Tanks in the streets, shots in the night. Soviet politicians involved in the coup against Mr. Gorbachev now allegedly in their sickbeds. There isn't very much that is clear in the Soviet Union tonight except this. The most important politician in the country to be freely elected, Boris Yeltsin, is now the central symbol of resistance to those who still have Mikhail Gorbachev under house arrest. And President Bush has told the world that he stands with Yeltsin and Gorbachev. Our first report is from Jim Laurie, who is in Moscow. Jim, go ahead.
Peter, there was confrontation in the streets of Moscow tonight, a short distance away from the Russian Federation building. A column of tanks was making its way up Kalinin Prospect, roughly a mile behind me, when it was confronted by a small crowd of people. It was after curfew hour, the newly imposed 11 p.m. curfew. The people tried to talk to the tank drivers, tried to persuade them to turn around in their move towards the Russian Federation building, and the soldiers then fired into the air a burst of machine gun fire to scare the people away. Now, one eyewitness told me that after that incident, at least one person was injured by the tank movement, and possibly one person was killed by sliding under the tank treads. That an eyewitness report just a short time ago. Generally speaking, around the Russian Federation building, people are defying the 11 p.m. to 5 a.m. curfew. The people there say that they do not obey the laws of the military junta. They obey only the laws of Russia and the decrees of Boris Yeltsin. The military-enforced curfew was among a string of decrees from the ruling emergency committee tonight. One declared that all Boris Yeltsin decrees were illegal. Yeltsin had said anyone who collaborates with the ruling junta would face criminal charges. Another decree by the committee banned all radio and television stations not controlled by the state. People here have been glued to two small independent Russian radio stations which managed to stay on the air. And mysteries surrounding the ruling emergency committee deepened tonight with the announcement that Prime Minister Pavlov was ill. He was suffering high blood pressure and was confined to bed. Other reports that General Yazov was also ill and had resigned were denied. But all of that raised speculation that the committee was a troubled one, plagued by disagreements on how to proceed. Mikhail Gorbachev's status was clarified today when we talked to members of his household staff. Gorbachev remains under house arrest with his wife Raisa at his summer vacation retreat in Faros on the Black Sea. ABC News has learned that Gorbachev, with the help of sympathizers, did attempt to leave the Crimea by air yesterday. The attempt was foiled and he was returned to his dacha. Security was then tightened, the airport closed, and patrol boats were put to sea just off the coast in the Black Sea, where his dacha is located. Peter?
Jim, it takes courage to go out into the streets against the Soviet military now. Do you get the sense, because you're not too far from that scene, that the resistance to the coup by those supporting Yeltsin is going to hold?
It's difficult to say when you're confronted by tanks and apparently soldiers willing to fire if this sort of resistance can continue for very long. But clearly tonight there are several thousand people out there willing to defend the Russian Federation building.
Okay, Jim, thanks very much. Again, we're getting a lot of rumors throughout the day. There has been now a report in from Reuters, the British news agency, that 3 people were shot dead outside the Russian parliament by Soviet tank crews. That's a report from a Reuters photographer. We as yet have no confirmation. There certainly has been rejection of the coup and political resistance to the coup leaders in many parts of the Soviet Union. With more on that, also in Moscow, here's ABC's Sheila Kast.
Tens of thousands filled Leningrad's Palace Square to demonstrate against the coup and cheer their republic leader, Boris Yeltsin. Leningrad Mayor Anatoly Sobchak declared the actions of Yanayev's emergency committee null and void. A few hours later, leaders of the Ukrainian parliament did the same thing. Ukraine is significant because it feeds so much of the Soviet Union. In Kazakhstan, President Nazarbayev who had often negotiated between Gorbachev and his right-wing critics, also called the Hardline Committee's actions illegal and demanded to hear from Gorbachev. In the Republic of Moldavia, several 100,000 protesters jammed the capital. And in the Baltic Republic, Soviet troops loyal to the Emergency Committee moved through Estonia to its capital, Tallinn. People demonstrated against the new regime, and Estonia declared its independence to show its defiance of the coup leaders. In Lithuania, troops surrounded the communication center, and Latvian radio said Soviet troops had killed a driver. And in Siberia and the far north, thousands of coal miners walked off the job. Yeltsin has been a champion of miners, and they were the only large group to go on strike. But oil field workers refused to go along, saying a strike by them would cripple the economy. In many cases, the groups which are rejecting the new government are the same groups which have pressed for more independence or economic control in the past. The test is whether that sentiment spreads. Sheila Kast, ABC News, Moscow.
There's a good deal more to report. ABC's Diane Sawyer has been inside talking to Boris Yeltsin today. We'll be back in just a moment.
This is World News Tonight with Peter Jennings. Brought to you by Post Fruit and Fiber Cereal.
High fiber cereal, no taste.
Great tasting cereal, no fiber.
Why have one without the other? Fruit and fiber, fruit and fiber.
Delicious raisins, nuts, dates, crunchy oat clusters, and crispy high-fiber bran flakes.
It's like no other. Fruit and fiber.
Great taste.
And high fiber.
Why have one without the other?
Post Fruit and Fiber cereal. Great taste and high fiber.
I have to get a ton of Clearasil Clear Stick.
Why? Your skin is perfect.
Sure, now it's fine, but the first day of school, I know I'm going to wake up with a zit that's going to make Mount St. Helens look like an anthill.
Ew.
I've got to get some Lee Rowan shoe racks. They fit over the door and hold 18 pairs.
Why do you have so many shoes?
My feet are the only part of me that stay the same size.
Oh.
I can't figure out what's different here.
Try everything.
President Bush is using stronger language today against the men he calls the coup plotters. He's made it clear that he is still very much firmly on Mikhail Gorbachev's side and on Boris Yeltsin. And he has told the Soviet leaders currently in power there will not be normal relations between the U.S. and the Soviet Union as long as the coup remains in effect. Here's our White House correspondent, Brit Hume.
The president had just sworn in his new ambassador to Moscow, Texas Democrat Bob Strauss, but he wanted it clear that Strauss was going there not to recognize the new government, but to take charge of the embassy and assess the situation.
And then to return within the next several days to give me a full personal report on what he sees there. He will not be presenting his credentials on this trip.
The president said he had spoken by phone this morning with Russian Federation President Yeltsin.
And I assured Mr. Yeltsin of continued U.S. support for his goal of the restoration of Mr. Gorbachev as the constitutionally chosen leader.
Mr. Gorbachev's status, he said, remains unclear.
And I've twice tried to reach him by phone, including within the last hour, but have so far been unsuccessful.
As for the explanation that Gorbachev is ill,
I can tell you that Yeltsin doesn't believe that, and I must tell you I don't believe it. But that is one of the canards being thrown out. It's really old-fashioned.
The president had his strongest praise yet for Yeltsin, a man the administration once regarded as a troublemaker.
He's a very courageous man, and he says he's convinced that the people will stand with him, and well, they should.
The president headed back to Maine this afternoon to resume his holiday, and by late in the day, he was out on his boat. But he had made clear this would now be more of a working vacation. There is one thing that could change that, and White House officials tell me tonight they regard it as a distinct possibility, and that is that this coup might fail. Peter?
Britt, President Bush has said several times today that the world is looking to the U.S. for leadership in this crisis. Does Mr. Bush really think the U.S. can do anything to reverse events?
He does not think that the U.S. can directly do anything to reverse events, Peter, but he is trying his best to discuss this matter with a whole range of European and other leaders so that his reaction will take into account all of their reaction. You'll note today, Peter, that despite his increasingly tough language, he said again today, as he had yesterday, that no one involved wants a return to the Cold War. That, of course, reflects sentiment felt in Germany in particular. So what you see here is an effort for him to pull all those sentiments together in his reactions.
Okay, Britt, thanks very much. The European community did decide today to send a delegation to the Soviet Union, but for one reason, they'll try to see Mr. Gorbachev. The European community is also applying economic pressure. More than $1 billion in aid to Moscow has been suspended, and the Japanese are holding back on a $350 billion loan. We'll have more in just a moment.
Did you know that on March 10th of 1876, on the 3rd floor of this building in Boston, Alexander Graham Bell spilled some acid on his trousers. Needing help, he quickly tried his latest invention. In another room, his assistant wrote in his journal the next words he heard, feeling they may have some historical importance.
Mr. Watson, come here. I want you.
And a small business was born. Today at AT&T, we understand the kind of entrepreneurial spirit you need to run a small business. But it takes more than an idea and a dream. So we offer you almost 5,000 small business specialists in service centers all over the country to help with your long-distance needs and help you grow. At AT&T, almost half our business comes from small business. When you succeed, we succeed.
Ever feel too clumsy some mornings to make a pot of coffee? Wake up to Maxwell House Filter Packs. You get a perfect pot every time. Maxwell House Filter Packs, blended with Colombian beans, because better beans make better coffee.
I need a laxative that can work dependably.
Doxadan can.
But can it be gentle?
Doxadan can. Doxadan works dependably overnight with a special ingredient for gentle relief.
Dependable, yes. Gentle, yes.
Doxadan can.
Time to talk to two of this country's best analysts on Soviet affairs. First, Bob Legvold, our resident analyst, the director of the Harriman Institute at Columbia University. Bob, this resistance to change in the Soviet Union is unprecedented. Do you think in any way it may have thrown the coup leaders off their game, so to speak?
It well may be that they misgauged what would be involved in doing this kind of thing. Soviet politics have changed enormously. In the past, when this kind of thing was done, it was essentially a matter of the leaders, the politicians. The people didn't count, and now the people count. And in fact, if they have raised this kind of resistance, the coup leaders, if they're not absolutely united in this thing, may be off their guard.
Now, you know a lot of the players, including Boris Yeltsin. Yeltsin is out there pretty exposed. If he wins, he's a hero. If he loses, he's a martyr. Is he the kind of man who's likely to go down in flames?
Well, he is a strong figure, and I think that he will resist to the last. If they storm the Russian Federation building tonight and seize him, there's not much more that he can do in terms of active leadership, but I think the force of his personality will still be there, and then we'll have to see what happens among the people, because at that point, events shift to them.
But you will confirm, I think, the belief that there are Russian commanders out there who'll have no hesitation shooting their way in?
Initially, the leadership, that is the leaders of the coup, are undoubtedly relying primarily on the special forces, the special divisions of the KGB and their counterparts within the interior police. But that may not be enough to deal with the entire country if this spreads. And then they have to turn to the rest of the military, and we don't know how the rest of the military will behave.
Okay, Bob, thanks very much. One American who studied the military very carefully, Dr. Condoleezza Rice from Stanford University, who used to advise President Bush. What about military commanders or soldiers prepared to kill Russians without any hesitation if need be, Dr. Rice?
Well, I do detect, Peter, some difficulty in the armed forces. Something is going on. There has been already one commander who has refused to participate in this, the commander of the airborne forces. And in fact, there's a report that he tried to go over to the Yeltsin side and was arrested. That's a very high-ranking officer, so there are some problems in the command. But I think that Bob made a very good point. I think so far they are relying largely on show troops and then on special forces. They have quite a few forces of the KGB, Ministry of Interior, and elements of the Army that are probably reliable to do almost anything.
Dr. Rice, you perhaps heard Edward Shevardnadze, the former foreign minister, talk again today about this being the beginning of a civil war. They haven't had one in 70 years. Is that talk over the top, or is that realistic talk at this point, do you think?
Well, I think we're now in a situation where there's a real risk of a civil war. Certainly there's been a low-level civil war throughout the Soviet Union in remote parts of the country, Azerbaijan, Armenia. But as things heat up in the Soviet Union proper, in Moscow and in the Ukraine, and particularly if the army splits, there is a real danger of civil war.
Dr. Rice, thanks very much. We'll try to fix that earpiece by tomorrow, and also Bob Legvold. We'll be back in just a moment.
I put off going to the doctor. But this burning stomach kept waking me up at night. Finally, I just went. I can imagine how relieved I was when my doctor said, Mylanta. He said I had heartburn. And heartburn like mine needed a strong medicine.
Mylanta is strong medicine. Strongly recommended. In fact, Mylanta is the antacid doctors recommend most.
My doctor said Mylanta.
Now available in cherry and cool mint cream flavors.
We've just found a way to make Nabisco spoon-sized shredded wheat even better. Every shredded wheat biscuit is now toastier and crispier because each is toasted through and through. It's almost like we let each little biscuit have its very own great day in the sun. Wake up to Nabisco shredded wheat. It tastes like it's sun-toasted.
Why put up with glasses that just don't fit? LensCrafters has so many ways to fit your snug points. Like snug fit pads that flex to comfortably hug your nose. LensCrafters, better fit for greater comfort in about an hour.
If you're using non-aspirin pain relievers, you should know about Bear Plus. Bear Plus has Bear Aspirin for powerful pain relief and Stomach Guard to help prevent stomach upset. So bang pain back with Bear Plus. Tough on pain, gentle on your stomach.
Red Lobster announces 6 great new trios with all the tastes you love, like large butterfly shrimp.
Terrific.
Try it on our Atlantic Trio, just $6.99.
$6.99?
For a limited time, only at Red Lobster.
Now, Red Lobster's lunch menu is available Sunday, too. So many great dishes to choose from for so little. Most lunches $4.99 or less. All week at Red Lobster for lunch. Now served Sunday, too.
If you have been monitoring events in the Soviet Union throughout the day, you know that the leaders of the coup deployed tanks and armored personnel carriers in the city today, including at one point 100 tanks who moved in the direction of the Russian Federation building. We've no indication that it's completely ringed by tanks and armored personnel carriers, but they've been squeezing the noose, and perhaps it was inevitable there was going to be some kind of a confrontation. You heard us report a little earlier on that the Reuters photographer on the scene is reporting 3 people shot dead outside the Russian Parliament building. And here we see in the latest video to come in just moments ago from Moscow the evidence of people's determination on the streets to resist where they can that military which is loyal to the coup leaders. These are armored personnel carriers trying to get through at least one of the roadblocks in the general vicinity of the Russian Parliament, and that is, of course, in the general vicinity of the Soviet embassy as well, not very far from the ABC News headquarters. Just listen for a second. Okay, my apologies. I talked too long before letting you hear it, but you get some sense there of the tension and the fear which has existed on the streets. Not likely, by the way, that Soviet television viewers will have seen that. So from their point of view, let us now go back to the tea leaves tonight. Before Mr. Gorbachev came to power, the average Soviet citizen knew just what he got when he turned on his television news. He got the party line and only the party line. Well, Mr. Gorbachev changed all that. But now that he's out of power in a coup that still appears to be incomplete, Soviet television is one of the few ways the average citizen can try to figure out what's happening. ABC's Jeff Greenfield watched tonight's newscast.
For the estimated 250 million viewers of Vremya, the nightly Soviet TV newscast, tonight's broadcast was a study in mixed messages. There were pictures of tanks in the streets of Moscow, but the report stressed how calm the situation was. Everything is peaceful, the reporter says, so why are you here?
To remain here and ensure law and order.
But some of the questioning was of a style that would have been unimaginable in pre-Gorbachev days, especially during a national crisis. A military officer is asked about rumors that the military will use force.
These rumors are coming from all over the country, but they're absolutely false.
The anchors also reported some dissenting opinion without embellishment. Komsomol Pravda, the Communist Party's youth newspaper, has suspended publication, and the editorial board urges the military not to blot its honor with the blood of our countrymen. The Union of Journalists expresses concern about the crackdown on the media and urges that the ban be lifted. Other reports seem a throwback to pre-Gorbachev days. Gains in productivity, increased output at a clothing factory, the opening of new roads and bus lines. Still others seem linked to a political agenda. Reports from around the country stress how calm the situation is, how citizens are going about their daily business. The reports on international news make no mention of the worldwide condemnation of the coup. World leaders are quoted about their desire for peace, not a word about the refusal of most nations to recognize the new government. Perhaps the most striking reminder of pre-Glasnost days is what the Soviet viewer did not see or hear. Not a single picture, not a single mention of Boris Yeltsin or Mikhail Gorbachev. Jeff Greenfield, ABC News, New York.
On this newscast, we'll have more in a moment.
April in Paris.
He spoke English like I spoke French, but somehow we talked for hours over coffee. Coffee so rich, I thought I'd never taste its like again.
Discover the deep, rich flavor of Maxwell House Rich French Roast.
Encore un café?
What?
More coffee?
Oui.
Maxwell House Rich French Roast, blended with Colombian beans because better beans make better coffee.
Look at all the different kinds of Lysol spray.
What's Lysol do?
Well, it disinfects and it gets rid of bad smells.
Like Dad's sneakers? P.U.
Yes, exactly like Dad's sneakers. Great deal on these Rubbermaid 2-packs.
Why do you need 2 laundry baskets?
I need one for whites and one for colors.
Doing laundry sure is complicated.
I told you Kmart changed.
Now I believe it.
Every business morning, while the rest of the world is getting up, UPS is guaranteeing overnight delivery before 10:30 for far less than other companies charge. And every business morning, more people are waking up to that fact.
Good morning.
Neighbors of Starwood say the finale of concerts brings the beginning of dangerous driving. I'm Ann Holt. We'll have the story coming up next on Channel 2 News at 6.
It is there where Boris Yeltsin, the president of the Russian Republic, has decided to make a stand against the men who've turned the country upside down. Throughout the day, the tension fed by rumors that Soviet military commanders would move against Yeltsin. And it was in that climate that ABC's Diane Sawyer got inside.
How does a ragtag crowd prepare to fight a division of tanks? They toss a few more bricks on their flimsy barricade, pile up sticks and stones, and post a few more slogans. One woman tried on a gas mask, while a man bellowed that able-bodied fighters should assemble nearby. There was a little cheer for a tiny unit of volunteers. The crowd fell quiet when a caravan of ambulances pulled around, and quieter still as they joined hands and waited. We made our way into the building all of those people stood ready to defend. The home of the independent Russian government had become a bunker. Corridor after corridor was nearly empty. In a room near the roof, a cluster of radio broadcasters was on the air, urging people to stand firm. You think a little broadcasting station downstairs here is going to keep freedom alive?
Yeah.
On another floor, officers pored over city maps and talked about which streets to block with buses and trucks. Guards had abandoned their lunch to don masks and flak jackets. Even men in suits were armed. And finally, we saw fire hoses lying ready, leading us to the closed doors where we found Boris Yeltsin and his state committee. Yeltsin's eyes were red with fatigue, but the energy was still there.
Нашим перехватом
We had intercepted radio communications which confirmed that it's true that the tanks were moving in this direction.
Yeltsin says that's when he sounded the alarm to President Bush and British Prime Minister Major, and placed a direct call to his enemies, too, warning that the world would hold the junta responsible for any bloodshed. Right now, you think the tanks are not going to roll?
I'm not sure. The danger is still there.
But you're all going to stay here, all of you, no matter what.
We've been here almost 48 hours now, and we're going to spend the coming night here too. We are not leaving the battlefield.
Diane Sawyer inside the Russian Federation headquarters, where there's already been a good deal of activity earlier this evening, and Diane is now standing, I think, on the balcony outside ABC News Bureau in Moscow, which is just up the road. Diane, you've had the rest of the day, so to speak, or at least some of the day, to think back on whether or not the people you met inside were realistic, given what else you know about the situation. What do you think?
You know, I think they're counting on a couple of things. I think they're counting on the fact that this committee of 8 seems to be strangely susceptible, in their view, to public opinion. And they're really counting on George Bush and John Major and Britain to use the power of their indignation to keep the committee in check. At the same time, they're superstitious, and Boris Yeltsin, as I was leaving, said he wouldn't say that he'd see me later because he didn't want to go that far. But he did wave his hand, and I have this image sort of engraved in my mind. He waved his hand and said, "Don't write any obituaries about us. We're not dead yet."
What do you mean when you say that the coup leaders may be susceptible to public opinion?
Yeltsin clearly believes that the only reasons that the tanks have not moved yet is that he made the phone calls this morning. He called George Bush, he called John Major, and he also called the leaders of the coup and told them that the world was watching them and the blood would be on their hands. He thinks that held them in check.
You made the point at the beginning of your filmed report that it was a kind of a ragtag army against all of the guns which the coup leaders have. What about a sense of realism from those people?
You know, I'm not sure that they're completely realistic about what's going on in the rest, even of Moscow. They're a very insulated group. They look in each other's eyes and they believe that the resistance will be fierce. But I'm not sure that they see the passivity that some of us see when we drive out in other parts of the city.
Now, I may be misreading this, but I hear something behind you, the sound of trucks on the street below you, which is not too far from the Russian Federation. Is there anything unusual going on down there?
Nothing at all. You're just hearing the roar of a big truck. It's not a tank, which I thought initially at first. It's not.
Anything else to report tonight, Diane?
No, I just might pass on to you what one source told us. We can't confirm it, but it gives you some sense of the lengths to which the resistance feels it's willing to go. We were told by a source inside the Federation building that they have mined some of the passages inside of the building, so that they're ready and waiting.
Okay, Diane Sawyer in Moscow, thank you very much indeed, and to Jim Laurie, our Moscow bureau chief there as well, and Sheila Kaff. That's our report on World News tonight. We'll keep you up to date on developments throughout the evening, and there will, of course, be a complete review of the day's events later this evening on Nightline. I'm Peter Jennings. Until tomorrow, good night.
And now, the news continues with Channel 2.